Hello, this video demonstration is going to focus on adding and dropping students for elementary teachers. There are three different scenarios when we're adding or dropping students that we need to be concerned with. The first is when we're adding or dropping students from within our school. So the student's already created in Pacement Reporter and they're already enrolled in our school. The second scenario is when we're adding a student from somewhere outside of our school, but inside of our district. So the student may have an account in Pacement Reporter, but it's been created with another school. We can add those students this year. And finally, the third scenario is a student that's brand new to the district and to the school, in which case we need to create an account in Pacement Reporter before we can add them to a class. Okay, let's take a look at your home page, and just to handle all enrollment issues, you want to go to your student icon and then down to the enrollment option. From here, this should look very familiar to people who have been using Pacement for several years. You have really three major features on this page. On the left, you have your current roster. This is your class. On the right, you have all the students that are not enrolled in your class, but are, in fact, enrolled in your school. And up here, you have a Create Student button. Okay, we'll talk about that in a moment. We won't need the Create Student button until we start dealing with students outside of our school. Okay, when we manage enrollment, it's very important to realize that we need to do that at the elementary level from the homeroom. Okay, if we look at a subject contained in the homeroom, for example, reading, the interface looks very different. And so if you see this, just look for this message. It's going to remind you students can be created and added in the homeroom only. So make sure you're in the homeroom when you want to add or delete a student. Okay, now notice on the top of each of these lists of students, we have some fields that will help you narrow your list. So this is a fifth grade class, so I'm going to narrow my list of students to fifth graders from within my school. And I'm then also going to narrow this to say student that has a P in the last name. Notice it's a P anywhere in the last name, not the first letter. And the student I wanted to add was Angelina Stupak. So adding a student is as simple as clicking, left click, and drag from my school to my class, and then save. And Angelina Stupak has been added to my homeroom, which means by default she's been added to all of the classes that are contained in my homeroom. So she's been added to all of these. There's my math class. Angelina Stupak is right here, all the way down to my writing class. Angelina Stupak is right here. Okay, so back to the homeroom. Dropping a student is just as simple. I find the student I want to drop. I can use the search feature, the search fields if I need to, or I can just find the student. For example, I'm going to take Adam Bryan, and I'm going to drop him from my class by dragging him to my school. These are kids not enrolled in my class, and pressing save. So I've just changed my enrollment by adding a student and dropping a student. Okay, that's our first scenario. Our second scenario was adding a student to your class that's not enrolled in your school. Okay, but they are enrolled in the district. So if we look here, these are only kids that are enrolled in your school. So if you search long and hard for a student that was new to your class, in other words, you added a student, but you can't find them in the school, well, they might be in the district. One thing you can do is enter a search right here and see if any students show up. If no students show up, then you know they're not in your school. So you can go create the student, and you can use the same ID right here. Now, if the student is somewhere in the district, then they will come up with all their information, just like this scenario. This will also tell me what school they are enrolled in now, or what roster they're showing up on as of right now, and what their what teacher's class they're enrolled in. If this is the right student, I can simply press add, and then I can close the white box and refresh. And I will have added a student named Pearson, I think. Caroline Pearson was added to Brandon Myers' fifth grade class. Okay? Well, what happened to Caroline? She was in somebody else's class. What happened to that teacher? Well, I've got that teacher over here. It was Buster Posey. And if we look at Buster Posey, when he logs in next, he will get a white box that says, you got a student drop notification. If you click on that, this will tell you who has the student now, what time the change occurred, and who the student is. Okay? It also lets you know you have 7 days to enter any outstanding information if you want to, or you can drop right now. So if you press drop now, all that means is you won't see that student in your gradebook at all anymore. If you press drop later, you'll have what's called a ghost student in your gradebook, meaning that you can enter any outstanding scores before the final drop occurs. Neither of these impacts whether or not Brandon Myers can enter grades for this student in his gradebook. He already has complete control over entering grades for Caroline Peterson. In this case, I'm going to press drop now, and I'm going to say all records are complete and finish. And that means that from Buster Posey's perspective, his classes will all be without Caroline Pearson now. Okay? So that's our second scenario. That's how you add a student that is enrolled somewhere in the district. You have to know the proper ID, and you really need to know that by looking up in your student management system or having a printout with that proper ID. Finally, adding a student to your class that's new to the district and to the school. So this means that when you enter that student ID, your search is not going to produce a student. So now you're looking in the whole district for this student, but that student ID doesn't exist. So it's very important that you make sure this ID is the correct ID before you make another student. You might end up with duplicate students. There will be difficulties connecting with state downloaded information and information from your test reporting system if we start getting fake student IDs, if you will. So make sure that you've got the correct student ID, either a printout or access to the online student management system before you go and create students. So now, since a student doesn't exist, I'll look at my student management system and see that the student's name is Jake Johnson, and his student number is, he's a 5th grader, he's a male, his birthday is February 19th, 03. This is optional. If you don't see it, you don't have to include it, but the rest of this should be complete. If I'm happy with all this information, I simply press add. And when I'm done, I go ahead and close my white box and refresh. Jake Johnson will show up on my roster, and he will be enrolled in all of my subjects. Jake Johnson. Okay? Last thing on enrollment is on the grade page. We've added some really neat features on the grade page that you're going to like. I can get to the grading page by going to my A+, my grade icon, and then go down to Math 5. The grading page is also called the assignment page. That's what I probably should have said, the assignment page. And if you look at your assignment page, you now have red circles and green circles with pluses and minuses. You can probably guess what those are for. If you click on a minus, you're going to drop a student, not just from this class, from this subject, but from your homeroom, so all subjects. These students that are gray are your go students. Basically what that means is these students are enrolled in somebody else's class right now, but you still have them for a few days so that you can enter any outstanding scores. As soon as you're finished with them, if you just want to have them go away, just press the minus red minus circle. It reminds you, are you sure you want to remove Brian from all subjects? And it's not just math, it's going to be all subjects. Say okay, and he will be gone from your roster completely, so you won't have Brian anymore. You can also drop a student who's not a go student, and of course you can add a student. That's what this is for. So if you're in the middle of grading, and it's just like adding a student if you were on the homeroom page, the enrollment page, excuse me. If you get the ID right and it's discovered, then unfortunately if you miss, there's no way to go. You have to start over. So I'll just delete that, and I think I meant to pick a student that was already in our system. I think it's that one. And if you find it's the right person, this will tell you where they're enrolled now. In this case, I'm adding a student I already have, but just for my example, you'd see this, and you could add if you wanted to. Since she's already on my roster, I'm just going to say cancel. Okay, that's elementary enrollment and adding and dropping students. There is one other video you might want to watch on creating groups. So even though you have an elementary setting, if you want to have ability groups shared by teachers, you can do that. You can also create a specialist. If you have kids that go out to science or music or PE or something like this, you can create a specialist so other teachers can interact with your students even though you're the primary provider, if you will. Thanks. Have a nice day.